Hey everybody, and welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are going to be looking at a really popular way to get out of debt.
Yeah, it's called the debt snowball method.
Debt snowball method.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've got some excerpts from a guide all about personal finance.
Perfect.
And it really breaks this whole method down.
Nice.
And, it's not just about like the math and crunching numbers and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
We're going to get into like the psychology
Uh-huh.
of how to get out of debt and like why this method works for so many people.
Awesome. Yeah, because I think there's a huge mental game when it comes to getting out of debt.
Huge.
So I'm intrigued.
What's really interesting about this is it kind of like goes against what you would normally think.
Okay.
The traditional financial advice
Yeah.
would be to prioritize the debt with the highest interest rate.
Right.
But this method is all about momentum
Okay.
and those small wins that kind of keep you going.
So let's get into the nuts and bolts of what is the debt snowball method.
Yeah. So I'm picturing like an actual snowball rolling down a hill,
Okay, yeah.
and it just starts picking up momentum as it goes.
I like where you're going.
You list out all your debts from smallest to largest,
Okay.
and you don't really even look at the interest rate yet.
So not by interest rate, but just by the pure amount.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then you just attack that smallest debt
Uh-huh.
with any extra cash that you can find,
Got it.
while obviously still making the minimum payments on all the other ones.
Right.
And then once that debt is gone, poof.
You roll that payment into the next one.
Exactly.
So it's like a chain reaction.
Like dominoes.
Dominoes. I love it. Yeah.
And that's where the psychology comes in.
Okay. How so?
When you achieve something,
Uh-huh.
even if it's small,
Yeah.
your brain is like, yes.
Right.
It gives you that little hit of dopamine,
I feel it.
that little reward.
It's the best.
So you're like, yes, I did it.
Yeah.
And that is powerful stuff.
So this approach really seems to resonate with a lot of people.
It does.
And it kind of sounds like you're hacking your brain a little bit
Yeah.
in a good way
In a good way.
to create like a positive feedback loop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You get those early wins.
Yeah.
You start to feel good about it.
Yeah.
And then you're more likely to keep going.
You build that momentum.
You build the momentum.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel less overwhelmed.
Right. Because that's a big one, right?
Yeah.
Feeling overwhelmed when you have all this debt.
Absolutely.
So instead of feeling overwhelmed, it's like, okay, I just accomplished this.
Yeah.
On to the next one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's get into like a real life,
Okay.
kind of more tangible example here.
I like it.
Let's say you have a credit card balance.
Okay.
That's like $1,500.
Uh-huh.
You have a personal loan.
Okay.
That's $5,000.
Hmm.
And then you've got like the big one,
Uh-oh.
student loan,
Student loan.
$20,000.
Yeah. That's the big one for a lot of people.
Yeah, so if you're looking at that, you'd probably be like, oh my gosh, that student loan.
Yeah.
But the debt snowball says, nope,
You don't even look at it.
not yet.
Okay.
You're going to focus on that $1,500.
Even if the personal loan has a higher interest rate.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So let's say you're making like a $50 minimum payment on that credit card.
Okay.
And you're like, all right,
I got to find some extra cash.
got to find some extra cash.
Yeah.
So maybe you cut back on eating out or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And you find an extra $100.
Okay.
And then you're like, ooh, I could probably sell some stuff online.
Yeah.
That's another $50.
There you go.
And then maybe you pick up like a little side hustle,
I love it.
a few hours a week.
Yep.
Another $50.
So you're adding $200 onto that $50 payment.
Exactly.
So you're at $250 a month.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so how long would it take to pay off that $1,500?
At that rate,
Yeah.
6 months. Poof, gone.
That's amazing.
And then what do?
Well, you roll that $250 onto the personal loan payment.
Exactly.
So instead of paying, I don't know, $100 a month, let's say,
Okay.
now you're paying $350 a month.
There you go.
That snowball is getting big.
It is getting big.
Okay, so I can see how this really picks up momentum.
Yeah, and you chip away at those larger balances faster and faster.
But it sounds like to really be successful with this, you really need to commit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The source material calls it gazelle intensity.
Gazelle intensity.
Yeah, you got to be like a gazelle.
Okay.
Just laser focused.
I like it.
It needs to be your top priority.
So it's not just the numbers.
No,
It's a total mindset shift.
it is.
Yeah.
And you might have to make some tough choices,
Right.
cut back on some things.
Right.
Maybe pick up that side hustle
Yeah.
and maybe delay some purchases you want to make.
But it's all about getting out of that debt cycle
Yeah.
and building a really solid foundation. Exactly.
So that you can eventually
Exactly.
do all the things you want to do.
And one of the keys to success is learning to celebrate those wins.
Oh, yeah,
So
absolutely.
no matter how small they are.
Yeah, it's huge for the mental game, right?
It is.
All right, so we've talked about how great this can be and how it works.
Yeah.
But are there any pitfalls?
Well, yeah.
Like, what could go wrong?
Like, what could go wrong?
Yeah, what are the challenges?
One of the biggest hurdles is just keeping up that enthusiasm.
Yeah, you start out,
Yeah.
you're all excited, and then life happens.
Life happens.
Yeah.
So it's easy to get caught up in that initial,
Yeah.
excitement.
Uh-huh.
But as weeks turn into months,
Yeah.
that drive can start to fade.
And those old habits can creep back in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's really important to have a plan for when you are just not feeling it.
Right.
When you're not feeling gazelle-like.
Yeah, not gazelle intense.
Not gazelle intense.
Yeah. So remind yourself why you even started this whole thing in the first place.
Yeah.
Visualize that feeling
Okay.
of being debt-free.
Uh-huh.
That's
great.
maybe create some kind of visual reminder,
Okay.
like a chart or
Yeah.
like a picture of a vacation you want to take.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Something that'll keep you motivated.
I love that. A visual reminder. It's
Yeah.
like your own personal cheerleader.
Yeah.
But what about when the debt just seems so huge?
Right.
So overwhelming. How does the debt snowball help with that?
That's where breaking those big debts down
Yeah.
into smaller milestones comes in.
Okay.
Remember that $20,000 student loan?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so instead of thinking about that giant number,
Right.
let's break it down into $1,000 chunks.
Okay.
It's kind of like running a marathon.
Right. You don't think about the finish line the whole time.
No.
You got to break it down.
You got to break it down.
Yeah.
You focus on each mile,
Okay.
and each mile that you hit makes you feel like, all right, I can do this.
You get a little boost.
A little boost.
Yeah.
You keep going.
Okay. I like it.
And each time you hit one of those milestones, it reinforces the belief that you can do it.
Right. It makes it feel more achievable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it prevents you from just feeling stuck
Right.
or paralyzed.
I can see how this could be really helpful
Yeah.
for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I bet some people are listening right now and they're thinking, wait a minute. Shouldn't I pay off the debt with the highest interest rate first?
Isn't that more logical?
Isn't that how it works?
And it's a good question.
Yeah.
And mathematically,
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
But the debt snowball isn't just about math.
Mm.
It's about behavior.
Mhm.
And for a lot of people, those early wins and that sense of accomplishment are more important
Okay.
than a small mathematical advantage.
Right. So you got to do what works for you.
You got to do what works for you.
Yeah.
Find something that you can stick with.
Right.
And for a lot of people, the debt snowball does that.
Okay. So you're saying it's okay to be a human and to need that little bit of a reward to keep us going.
Yes. Embrace it.
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've been talking about gazelle intensity and how important it is to stay focused.
Yeah.
But what about when life happens
Oh, yeah.
and those unexpected expenses pop up?
That's when having an emergency fund is key.
Yes.
And ideally, you would set that
Before you even start.
exactly.
Got it.
But, if you do have an emergency
Yeah.
and you have to use that money,
Yeah.
it's okay to hit pause on paying off debt
Okay.
and focus on filling that emergency fund back up.
Because it's your safety net.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It keeps you from falling back into that debt cycle
Right.
that you work so hard to get out of.
And we don't want to do that.
No.
Okay. So flexibility is key.
It is.
Yeah. Well,
Like, this isn't just a rigid
right.
set of rules.
Mhm.
It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's a
Yeah.
framework,
Okay.
and you can adapt it.
That makes a lot of sense. So
Yeah.
you got to figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your personality,
Right.
your goals.
I love that.
Yeah.
So it's about being mindful
Uh-huh.
and making conscious choices.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah.
So before we move on to the next phase of this whole thing,
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about how to find that extra cash.
Yes.
Because we've talked about how important it is to have that extra money to put towards the debt.
Yeah.
So what are some ways that people can find that extra cash?
Well, one thing you can do is sell some of that stuff that's been sitting around.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Gonna-
What kinds of things are we talking about?
Clothes you don't wear anymore.
Yeah.
Electronics,
Mhm.
old furniture,
Okay.
anything.
I love it.
And then, of course, there's the classic side hustle.
Yeah.
You know.
Everyone's talking about side hustles.
Everyone's got a side hustle these days.
Yeah.
Driving for a ride share service,
Yeah.
pet sitting,
Hmm.
freelance writing, if you're into that.
Uh-huh.
Anything that uses your skills and interests,
I like it.
Yeah.
And then what about just saving money every day?
Oh, yeah.
Like, what are some tips for that?
Bring your lunch to work instead of eating out.
That's a good one.
Make your own coffee.
Yes.
Cut back on some subscription services that you don't really use.
Yeah, the streaming services can get you.
I get you.
Yeah.
All those little things add up.
They really do.
Yeah. It's all about being mindful of where your money is going.
Right.
And making choices that support those financial goals.
It's like you're training for a financial marathon.
It is.
Right.
You're training.
And gazelle intensity is just one season of it.
It's a season.
Yeah.
It's not forever.
Right.
You know?
It's temporary.
Yeah.
So, but financial freedom
Yes.
is the finish line.
It's the goal.
It's the prize.
It is.
Yeah. Okay.
And once you cross that finish line,
Yeah.
the possibilities
Oh, yeah.
are endless.
That's awesome.
It is.
So what happens next?
Let's talk about it
I can't wait.
after the break.
Stay with us.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back. So before the break, we were talking all about gazelle intensity, and you know those small wins you get with the debt snowball method. But I want to talk about what happens when things don't go exactly to plan.
Right, because let's be real, life happens.
Life happens exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the roadblocks people might hit with this?
I think one of the biggest ones is just keeping up that initial enthusiasm.
Yeah, you're all gung-ho at the beginning, and then...
Yeah, I'm a gazelle. I got this.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then a couple months in, you're like,
It's not so fun anymore.
yeah, this is kind of hard.
Yeah.
So it's really crucial to have a strategy for when you hit those moments where you're just not feeling it.
Okay, so like what would you recommend for someone who is feeling like they're losing steam?
Honestly, the best thing to do is just remind yourself why you even started on this journey.
Yeah. Go back to the why.
Exactly. Like, what is the end goal here?
Right.
You know, visualize that feeling of being debt-free.
Uh-huh.
You know, maybe even create a visual reminder.
Ooh, I like that.
You know, put it somewhere you're going to see it every day.
Like what kind of visual reminder?
Like a debt tracking chart.
Okay, yeah.
Or even like a picture of a vacation you want to take.
Oh, yeah.
Once you're debt-free.
That's a good motivator.
Yeah, something that's really going to keep you inspired.
Okay, I like it. Like your own little personal cheerleader right there in your fridge.
Exactly.
But what about those huge debts that just seem impossible to pay off?
Yeah, it can be so overwhelming.
How does the debt snowball help with that feeling of just being completely overwhelmed?
Well, that's the beauty of this whole method, you know.
Okay.
We've been talking about breaking those big debts down
Right.
into smaller, more manageable pieces.
Yeah.
So remember that $20,000 student loan we were talking about before?
Uh-huh.
Instead of focusing on that huge number,
Right.
break it down into like $1,000 chunks.
Oh,
So every time you hit
we
1,000,
celebrate. You're like,
Yes.
yes.
yeah, a little mini victory.
Yeah, you're like, all right, I did it. 1,000 down, only 19 to go.
So it's like running a marathon.
Exactly.
You don't think about the finish line the whole time.
No, you got to break it down to miles.
Okay.
And every mile marker you hit,
Yeah.
you're like, okay, I can do this.
You get a little boost of energy.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I like it. So each milestone kind of proves to you that you're capable of doing this.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it prevents you from feeling stuck or paralyzed.
Right.
Okay. So this makes a lot of sense to me, but I'm sure some people are listening and they're like, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Shouldn't I pay off the debt with the highest interest rate first?
Right. Isn't that like the smart thing to do? Isn't that what everyone says?
Mathematically, that makes more sense, right?
Yeah.
And it's a really good question.
Yeah.
And mathematically, it does make more sense.
Yeah.
But like we've been saying, the debt snowball method is not just about math.
Right.
It's about human behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes those early wins and that feeling of accomplishment are way more powerful
Yeah.
than that tiny mathematical advantage.
So you got to do what keeps you going, right?
You got to do what works for you.
What works for you, yeah.
Find a system that you can stick with.
Because that's what matters most.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're saying it's okay to acknowledge that we are human and we need those little rewards.
Embrace it.
Yeah, exactly. Embrace the humanness.
We're not robots.
We're not robots.
You know?
All right, so we've been talking about gazelle intensity and how important it is to stay focused, but
But
life throws curveballs right
all the time.
all the time. Yeah, and sometimes those curveballs come with a price tag,
Yeah.
like unexpected expenses.
Yeah, the car breaks down, the medical bills pop up.
Yeah,
You lose your job.
job loss.
It happens.
So what do you do when those unexpected expenses come up?
That's when having an emergency fund is so important.
Yeah, we touched on this a little bit earlier.
Yeah. And ideally, you would have this set up
Before you even start the debt snowball.
right from the get-go.
Okay.
But if you do have an emergency
Uh-huh.
and you have to dip into that emergency fund,
Right.
it's okay to press pause on the debt repayment.
Really?
Yeah. And just focus on refilling that emergency fund.
Because you need that safety net.
You do.
Yeah.
It prevents you from going back into debt.
Right.
when those unexpected things happen.
And all that hard work you did is for nothing.
Right. You don't want to undo all that progress you've made.
Yeah, exactly. So it sounds like flexibility is key.
It is.
This is not just a rigid set of rules.
Right. It's not one size fits all.
You got to adapt it.
You got to do what works for you.
What works for you, your situation, your personality, all that good stuff.
Exactly.
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we move on to the next phase of this whole debt repayment journey, I want to go back to something we were talking about before about finding that extra cash
Right.
to throw at your debt every month.
Got to find it somewhere.
You got to find it somewhere. Yeah. What are some ways people can free up some extra cash in their budget?
Well, one thing you can do is go through your house
Okay.
and find things you don't use anymore.
Okay.
And sell them.
Sell it.
Like
what kind of things are we talking about?
clothes you don't wear anymore,
Uh-huh.
old electronics,
Yeah.
furniture that's just been sitting in the basement,
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You'd be surprised what people will buy.
People buy anything.
Yeah, they really do.
Okay, so declutter and make some money.
Exactly.
2 birds, 1 stone.
And then there's always the side hustle.
Okay. Yeah, side hustles are huge these days.
Everyone's got a side hustle.
Yeah.
So, think about what you're good at.
Uh-huh.
What do you enjoy doing?
Right.
Maybe you can drive for rideshare service.
Okay.
Maybe pet sit.
Yeah.
Maybe you're a good writer and you could do some freelance writing.
Ooh, yeah. Okay.
Find something that fits your skills and your interests.
I like it.
And then on top of that, just look for little ways to save money in your everyday life.
Okay. Yeah, like what kind of things are we talking about?
Well, instead of buying your lunch every day,
Uh-huh.
bring it from home.
Brown bag it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's a classic.
Make your coffee at home.
Oh, yeah. Stop going to those fancy coffee shops.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that one can get me. I love a good latte.
Oh, yeah. I know it's tempting.
It's so tempting.
But think of all the money you'll save.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay, so coffee at home, check.
And then go through your subscriptions.
Oh, yes.
How many streaming services are you paying for?
Too many.
Too many. Probably right.
Yeah.
Maybe cut back on a few of those.
That's a good point.
Yeah, all those little things add up.
They really do.
Yeah, it's all about being mindful of where your money is going
Right.
and making choices that really support your goals.
Okay, so it's like we're training for a financial marathon,
We are.
right? And Gazelle Intensity, that's just one season of training.
It's a season.
Yeah.
It's not forever.
It's not forever.
Okay.
So it's temporary, but financial freedom.
That's forever.
That's the ultimate goal.
That's the finish line.
That's the prize.
And once you cross that finish line,
Yeah.
you're going to have so many options.
Oh, yeah.
The possibilities are endless.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens after we cross that finish line?
Well, that's a great question.
Let's talk about it.
And that's exactly what we're going to dive into right now.
Awesome, let's do it. Okay, so we're back, and we spent a lot of time now talking about the debt snowball method.
We've covered a lot of ground for sure.
Yeah, from like that feeling of those first little wins and all the way to like, what do we do when stuff hits the fan and celebrating those wins?
Yeah, we talked about gazelle intensity
Yeah.
and how to break down those really big debts into smaller pieces.
Yeah, so it doesn't feel so overwhelming.
Exactly.
But now, let's get to the fun part.
The fun part.
Yeah. What happens when you've done it?
Oh, yeah.
You've reached the mountaintop. You're debt-free.
You're debt-free.
What does that world look like?
That's when this whole debt snowball thing
Yeah.
really starts to pay off.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not just about getting rid of the debt.
Right.
It's about having a future
Yeah.
where you're financially stable
Right.
and you have options.
And you're free.
And you're free. Yeah, exactly.
It's like you've cleared the path.
Yeah, you've cleared the past, you got the momentum,
Yeah.
and now you can start building something amazing.
I love that. Okay, so what's the next step?
So, according to the source material here,
Okay.
the next step is all about
Yeah.
building that financial security
Okay.
and having a fully funded emergency fund.
Okay, so emergency fund, that's 3 to 6 months of living expenses.
Exactly.
We talked about that a little bit before, but why is this so important?
Oh, it is so important.
Yeah, especially after you work so hard to get out of debt.
Right.
Yep.
Imagine you've done all the hard work.
Yeah.
You're feeling good. You're
Yeah.
feeling good. You're making plans.
Yeah.
And then, bam,
Uh-oh.
life throws you a curveball.
Yeah, life loves those curveballs.
Oh, it does. It does.
Yeah. So give me an example, like what kind of curveball are we talking?
Okay, so let's say your car breaks down
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and it needs like a major repair.
Expensive.
It's expensive.
Huh.
Yeah. Or maybe there's a medical emergency
Yeah.
that your insurance doesn't completely cover.
Uh-huh.
Or maybe you lose your job.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
Yeah. So in those situations, that emergency fund is your lifeline.
Yeah, it's what keeps you afloat.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's really important to have that cushion.
It is.
Yeah. So that you don't go back into debt.
Exactly. You don't want to undo all that hard work that you did.
No, we don't want to go back there.
No.
Okay, so I get it. Emergency fund's super important.
Yes.
But it can feel like a big hurdle to overcome.
I know.
Especially after you've been laser focused on paying off debt.
Right. But the good news is you've already built those money-saving muscles.
Yeah.
You know how to prioritize your spending.
Yeah.
You know how to find extra cash.
Yep.
And you know how to stay committed to a goal.
So we can use all of those skills to build our emergency fund.
Exactly.
Got it.
Plus, all that money that you were putting towards debt,
Uh-huh.
you can now put that towards your emergency fund.
Oh, yeah. It's like you freed up all this space in your budget.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't have to find this, like, giant chunk of money.
Yeah.
It's about those small, consistent contributions over time.
It's the snowball effect all over again.
It is.
Right.
I love it.
And once you have that emergency fund in place,
Yeah.
that peace of mind,
Oh, yeah.
it's amazing.
It's the best feeling, right?
It is. You can face those challenges head on.
Knowing that you've got that cushion to fall back on.
Exactly.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into the debt snowball,
Yeah.
what's the big takeaway here?
I think the biggest thing is that this isn't just about getting out of debt.
Right.
It's about changing your whole mindset around money.
Okay.
It's about building those good habits that
Yeah.
are going to set you up for success.
So even if someone decides not to use the debt snowball,
Yeah.
they can still take away some valuable lessons.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about focus.
Yeah.
Intensity.
Gazelle intensity.
Gazelle intensity.
Yeah.
Celebrating those wins.
Right.
Those are all things that you can apply to any financial goal.
That's a great point, you know?
Yeah, so no matter what you're working towards,
Yeah.
you have the power to achieve it
You do. You have the power to take control of your money.
and create the future that you want.
Exactly. I love that message.
Yeah.
All right, so we would love to hear from you.
Yes.
What resonated with you from this deep dive?
What are your thoughts on this whole debt snowball thing?
Yeah. Did any questions come up for you?
Yeah, share your insights.
Yeah, let us know.
Let's keep this conversation going.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.